Okay.
Yeah. Man, I tell you, it's been coming. A long time coming, baby. All they ever tell me is don't stop, don't stop, don't stop, don't stop. Ooh. How can I do what they say? All I gotta do is stay me. Yeah. I won't fail, no way, no way. They try to tell me you cannot prevail. Okay, watch me get it, I'm a man, I might work. Tell my family I'ma do it. Really all it takes is time and the grind for your goals. Like the air that you breathe, it's air that I need. Never thought this was a dream, always knew I could attain it. Mama told me you could do anything you set your mind to. I believe her words like Christians to the Bible. Been practicing my whole life like a damn recital. Writing in my room every night. Look up at the moon, thanking God for this life right now. Did someone go tell you go do that lady? No, oh, like they really know you, they don't really know you. So, oh, do what you love, I don't wanna see you look back. Close your eyes and aim for the shot with your face. I want you to make it, baby, I know you're gonna make it, baby.
I want to welcome you one more time to this special episode of Simply Philosophy. Now, today's episode is so special because not only are we videoing or recording a video of this episode, but we are just really excited to talk about something that's very fundamental in our own individual lives. And I think that it's ultimately fundamentally important, especially in this day and time as we deal with an epidemic that is affecting people all over the world right now. So today's episode is very special. We want to talk about balance. And is it a fundamental virtue? Is it the most highest virtue? Balance. And, before we get into the philosophy of it all, we got a special shout out or a spotlight for this episode. What is it?
Yeah, spotlight sponsor.
The spotlight sponsor today is my brother, Dejour. Alright? So we
Yes.
Right? That's right. He deserves recognition. I'm telling you right now.
Yes.
Alright, so Dejour, my brother, he puts a lot of artistry into his music, and what it is that he's trying to share with the world is a vision of just being yourself and being free ultimately, and I think that he deserves a spotlight recognition because he's such an inspiration, not only in my life but in people's lives everywhere. But we'll play some of his tracks on this episode.
Yeah.
And check out his music. So, he goes by Dejour,
His album.
His album is on Spotify, on all streaming platforms. It's called The Last Original. All right, you guys will know the meaning to that if you go out and listen to it. I'm not going to drop too much, but
It's amazing, honestly. It's what the time is for to listen.
Yeah, yeah, it is. I'm about to listen to it again right after this segment. But Simply Philosophy. So, before we get into the philosophy of it all, we got a little altar set up here. Water, earth, wind, fire, and we even got a little smoke, which creates a space of a balance. And how do you balance, How do you find balance? What is balance? Let's start there. Is it the highest virtue? And how do you find it in your life? So balance to me is the ability to find the middle path. The Buddhists call it the middle path, right? And it's ultimately trying to find yourself centered in a world that your spirit actually takes you to. We're born here and then we die. You know, maybe it's morbid. You know, maybe it's morbid, but I'm just saying, like, we all have a similar transitions through this life as we come into this physical reality and physical existence. So maybe you want to call death a transition or just another form of life. I could even go there with you. But in ultimate reality, how do you find your balance in these times of transition throughout your life? You know, that's what balance is for me. Balance is trying to find your peace or your middle ground in this transition. And you know, because we have options, you know, there's so many choices, you know, and as technology advances and as we move or grow older, it hopefully into wisdom, into more knowledge, and we start to find ourselves with different ideas and different impressions coming on to us, and different relationships and different how do you find balance in between everything that's going on in your spiritual life? How do you find balance in the things that you do? Do you eat too much? Do you not eat enough? Do you know food is nourishing to our body? Do you choose to engage in your relationships or communicate, or do you choose to stay silent? You know, what are the two extremes, and then how can you find the middle ground or the middle pathway? You know, that's what balance is ultimately to me. So Queen, what do you think balance is? How would you define it?
So from a personal standpoint, like my experiences in life. So firstly, encouraging everyone to have a think about what balance means to them. It's probably the first and foremost thing to do, because it's something that I think about often in my life, because we're constantly trying to achieve some goal, or, you know, find our center, find our purpose, find our path. There's many people that I speak to on a regular basis who feel as though they aren't fulfilling their purpose, in a sense. And often I think that comes down to balance again.
Yeah, Chief Keef.
Okay. Yeah, so often I feel like that comes down to balance, and from my personal experiences of finding balance in my life, it has been, like, it's not a perfect path, do you know what I mean, finding balance. So if you think that once you find it, it's just going to be perfect, it's really not. Finding balance and keeping that scale on a level is very difficult, basically, and not in a disconcerting way, but in a disciplined way. Because if you have a scale and you take one grain of sand to the other, it kind of, it unlevels it. So that's how easy it is to kind of tip from one side to the other when you're finding balance in your partner. And I think for me personally, what has helped me to find balance is realization of kind of where I am in my life, understanding who I am, so my characteristics and the way that I work as an individual, as a person, and actually how I've changed over time. You know, like there's a particular time where I might have been this way, and I've grown and I've learned and I've evolved, and also adapting your mind to those changes and observing and being aware, being honest with yourself. Like, that's a big part of like achieving balance in your life. If you're a nocturnal person, you're just a nocturnal person. So if you work effectively at night, like I'm kind of a nocturnal person, so if you work effectively at night, don't try and force it to be like the person who goes to bed at 9 and they can wake up real early and they're more effective during that time, but you're effective at 9. And a lot of the time I feel like we're trying to like mold our life to particular formulas that society has kind of already put out there for you. And if you don't follow that particular formula, then somehow you're doing something bad in your life, or somehow you're not balanced. But what you have to do is find individually what works for you as a person. And I think that's the best way that I could describe how I found balance, is understanding my characteristics, my tendencies, the way I work, the way my mind works. And once you break down those things, you can start to understand how you can be effective as a person, how you can create and maintain balance in your life.
Yeah, I think those are all amazing points. And you know, I would go to, as you know, to say that it's almost like you're describing knowledge itself.
Mm-hmm.
And
to some extent, like there's a level of like, you know, practicality as well.
Yeah, so like that practice or that practicality of like, okay, like discovering who you are, and you know, figuring out what works for you and what doesn't work for you. Mm-hmm. And you know, all right, like that's a journey of exploration. So like, how does the transition come? You know, I can see how the transition comes of making it a virtue, right? Because a virtue is actually a characteristic of like how you live your life, or like how you are. So, you know, in this process of like knowledge of self and exploring, okay, what works for you, what doesn't work for you, and then finding a middle ground in between that.
Right.
You know, before we get to the character, well, this goes in terms of like, okay, what the virtue is. It's a characteristic of the way you live your life. It's like a liberty, right? So like making it a virtue and it just being an exploration, you know, like that in itself is a journey. Like that pathway is like, what are some of the disciplines, you know, that you would find, that, you know, people would find themselves in, of like it being too much and not enough, you know, like battling with that, like too much in your mind. It's like overstimulation of like, because are we here for the, like for me it's like, are we here for the body or are we here for the spirit? You know, like should I just go to the forest and meditate, or should I just indulge in my senses?
I mean, and that's where balance comes in, you know,
Yeah.
because I think a lot of the time, especially when it comes to the spiritual community and the kind of shift in consciousness, and now on social media, you know, so you can go and buy spirituality, like it's sold, in a sense, it's commodified. And the dangerous aspects of that commodity is the fact that people become imbalanced because they're chasing particular routes or particular kind of ideas that have kind of been presented to them and concepts that are presented to them that aren't sustainable, basically. So you have to find a sustainable way to live, in the same way that we're constantly talking about sustainability, you know, in the earth, you know, like we need to be living in a sustainable way, and that comes down to your mind and your body. So it's not solely focusing, you know, on, okay, I'm just going to sit and I'm going to meditate for in the forest for the rest of my life. I mean, some people choose to do that, you know, some people choose to just dedicate their life to meditation, and that's fine if that's the path that you've chosen and that's where you find balance. But even those people, they have a level of practicality in their life. They have duties, they have work to do, whether it is like in monasteries, for example, you know, like you still have duties in a monastery. You can't just be sitting down and no, you sitting in meditation, you're not going to make breakfast. Someone has to do that, you know, in the monastery. Like you take turns, like you make breakfast, you make lunch, you make dinner. Okay, we need to go out and we're going to tend to the people who in return offer money or food and these kind of things to sustain their lifestyle, basically. So either way, they still have to utilize their physical, they still have to utilize their flesh. Like this, it's not, balance isn't about being delusional. That's yeah, so balance isn't about being delusional or being, or lacking practicality. You know, you have to be practical in this world. And I think a lot of the time in the spiritual world, there is this disassociation with practicality, disassociation with the world itself. And I'm not really for that, personally. For me, balance is the highest virtue. And I say that purely because I overstand that I am having a physical experience. Yes, for experience, you know, so I understand that, and I understand that there's practical things within my life that I want to do, you know, there's things that I want to achieve, there are ideas, there are people that I want to see, that I want to communicate with. So no, I don't want to sit in meditation all the time. But yes, I enjoy meditation because it brings me peace, it brings me balance, it brings me center outside of the things that I have to do, you know, in my physical being. So you have to learn, you know, we have to be practical about life. Even, you know, if you're going to think about divine beings, basically, they had a work to do. They didn't come here and just sit down in meditation, or we're just saying, okay, I'm just a spirit and I don't have any work. Now, they were going around preaching. They were going around speaking to people. They were teaching, you know. So they, in their they use their physicality as a practical tool to instill spirituality, basically. So we have to be able to do the same thing in our own lives, you know, whatever that purpose might be, whether you are a dancer, or you're an athletic, or you're an academic, whatever it might be that you choose in your life, whatever that path might be, can be merged with your spiritual life. There is no way. There's nothing that you're doing that you can't merge or that you can't find balance with your spiritual life, because essentially you can disassociate, you can disconnect, you know, from your spiritual life,
which is an imbalance.
Which is an imbalance.
Yeah.
So finding that balance within yourself, it's taking the time basically to know. And I think a lot of the time in our society, actually, people know when they need to stop.
Yeah.
People know when they need a break.
Okay.
But generally they ignore it, because it's like we live in this world where it's just go time all the time basically, and everyone's kind of chasing after something in a sense, you know, and generally people know when it's time to kind of take a break, to center. But a lot of the time it's ignored, and then, you know, you hear people, oh, this person got burnout, or this person has this, or, you know, some kind of condition kind of comes down on them, some kind of ailment. And that's usually due to imbalance in our life that causes these kind of ailments, whether it's mental illness or it's physical illness.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, it really is about imbalance in your life.
Yeah.
So for me, it is the highest virtue, because any small amount of, for long enough, if you're in balance for long enough, no matter what that might be, it will have an effect on you.
Yeah.
You know, it will have some kind of detrimental effect on you. A lot of the time when people are ill, and, you know, I don't support pharmaceuticals, but when they're giving people drugs, it's in order, they say, to create this balance. Someone has a chemical imbalance in their mind, you know, so it's always going back to that same thing. So for me, personally, it's always trying to find or listen to myself, listen to my body, listen to my mind, knowing when those moments are that I need to stop, that I need to recenter, that I need to revise an idea. Sometimes we be running on an idea that might not be working, like, you know, so revising things, contemplation, all of these things are important in rebalancing yourself, because it's not this steady, well, it's like I said, you know, you take one grain of sand from something, it's easy to tip. So it's for you to be conscious, you know, be conscious of yourself and be aware of yourself, of who you are, and understand that it's not about comparison or following someone else's path, or this person did it like this though, so I ought to do it. Yeah, we can learn from people. It's important to learn from people, from what people have done. There's no point in making the same mistakes, repeating history over and over. So learn from things, of course. You know, it's prudent to learn from things. But at the same time, know that whatever way that you choose to do it will always be distinctive to you. You know, so it's about you adapting and learning to utilize the things in this world, basically, to create the balance for you in your life that works.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything you said. Especially in this current generation. You know, we live in a generation where we have to shift, and we have to, like, you know, be aware of the changes that are happening around us, and efforts to kind of, they happen super quickly, and almost to the fact where, you know, we're losing touch of what balance is on a global scale.
Yeah.
You know, not just from the individualism, because we are unique as individuals.
Sure.
You know, they say everybody on this planet has different fingerprints. You know, my dad used to always ask me who's they, but science says everybody everybody on this planet has different fingerprints, and
we had a palm reading, so we know that you know. That's
true. Yeah. And the lines on your palms actually change, but
we'll talk about that in another.
Shout out to Auntie.
Yes.
But you know, really, like, the balance is, you know, the balance versus the imbalance. You know, because sometimes when, you know, I think about balance, sometimes it's like a scale. You know, it's like a scale of, like, and we're always fighting between the ideas of, like, good or bad. And then, like, how do you find your middle ground? Oh, it's not really bad because it's maybe bad to one culture but good to another culture. And, you know, ultimately I feel like sometimes it's not about good or bad or right or wrong, but it's about kind of like you said, acknowledging, you know, who you are as a person and what works for you, and like you know when to stop, or you know when you should be doing something that you haven't really been doing, and then you need to go another route or another path, or you even know when to, you know, you should push yourself, you know, if you have the discipline in your mind, because ultimately I feel like a lot of times in society it dulls us down to the point where we don't really know what's right and what's wrong, to the point where we don't really know what's good and what's bad. So now it's like a merging or a blending.
Right.
So, you know, just a quick philosophy on your idea of like blending and merging, right? And like balance in itself. Because if we're supposed to be finding balance and say, okay, this is working for me, how, like you said, it's not about comparison to another person. And I think a lot of times in society we make, because we're seeing that, especially with the advancement of social media, and we want to be like this, or we want the like, or we want to do things, for, we want to do things for recognition almost,
Yeah.
How do you find balance living in a material and a social world, living in a capitalistic world, living in like that balance between living in society and living in society, and also having your own grounding of like, this is what brings me peace, because I think that if it's not bringing me peace, then I shouldn't be living it. Like I shouldn't really be living it. I'm just here I'm just burdening with it through.
Yeah.
So does balance come with a certain type of burden?
Sure. It does. No, it does. I definitely think it does.
Yeah.
There's definitely been times within like my academic life. It's been such a big and integral part of my life. So there's definitely been times where I don't want to do this. Do you get it?
Yeah.
Like that's generally how I feel in myself, and I'm like, this isn't bringing me peace necessarily. It's not making me necessarily happy in this moment in time, but the awareness that I have in those moments is that this is a moment, first and foremost. So it's like, these are the kind of things that I would say to myself, like this.
Breathe in, breathe out.
Yeah, it's a moment.
Yeah.
It is a moment, and it's something that I have to do in order to get to my next destination. So I have an idea, a goal about where I want to go. And there is gonna be rough moments, It's not gonna be smooth sailing all the time. So no, I haven't been peaceful throughout this entire journey. But when I tell someone about it, oh yeah, I studied this or I've been studying that, it sounds so amazing and it sounds so smooth and it sounds.
They don't know the journey.
They don't know the journey.
Yeah.
So people don't know what you've necessarily been through, and that you haven't been able to just smile and be giddy throughout the whole process. However, after that moment passes, like, okay, you complete the task and it's done or it's over. Then I can be like, okay, I can say meditation now, and I can find my peace, and I can find my center, and I can unload what feels like the world on my shoulders, basically. So I can unload and I can take the time to let go of whatever feelings I'm feeling, whatever burdens I'm feeling in those moments in time. I can just take a moment to just breathe. And whatever it is that you do as an individual that brings you that kind of peace. It might not be meditation, it might be painting, it might be dancing, it might be cooking. So there's many things that can bring you that kind of meditative state or that peace, essentially. So for me, yes, I do think that in balance there is a level of kind of, Buddhists would say, suffering, basically, or dis-ease. So
challenge.
Yeah, there is
a challenge.
It's there. It's life, and if you're unable to accept that, if you think that you're gonna be in some kind of, on this physical plane anyways, you think there's just gonna be just complete bliss all the time, then you're gonna learn very quickly. Because life will teach you very quickly that that's not the way how it is.
The universe has its own way of showing you its balance. Like, that's beautiful right there. The universe has its own way of showing you what balance is. Mother Nature herself has a way of showing you what balance is. Like, we are here as human beings for a reason. We have our purpose, but so does the ant. So does the bird. So does the worm. They all have their purpose, and without this balance, without this ecological balance, and us not being aware of what that is, then we will ultimately not only destroy ourselves and our own individual aims to achieve balance, but destroy the earth in its process. So I think an important part is actually to remember that balance is not just about what you do or what you find within yourself, but it's also, how do you relate You know, how can you find balance with, you know, not only the way that you carry out your actions, but how do you find balance in your relationships? How do you find balance in, you know, in the way that you eat? How do you find balance in, you know, your spiritual life? How do you find balance in your physical life? How do you find, you know, these principles? Balance is ultimately not only a virtue, you know, some would debate the highest virtue, but it's also a it's also a trait, you know. It's a way of living, you know. It's a foundation, you know. It's a principle. Balance is a principle, you know. So with this principle, you know, the ancient Kemet, right, would describe it as above, so below. You know, as above, so below. As in the solar system, so on this earth. As within your body, so without. So, you know, I want to encourage everybody to pay attention to those things that are happening inside of you, so that you can know how to interact with the things outside of you. You know, pay attention to the subtle shifts, because the growth shifts are there as reminders. They're there as signs, as signals that you can use in efforts to find balance in your life, or find meaning, find reason. So once you start to take those signs and take those signals, you'll be able to reflect at a later time and digest the information. That's why we encourage everyone on this platform to meditate, whether it be 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or just whatever meditation is for you. Taking the walk in the park. You know, we have a podcast episode on meditation specifically. It doesn't just need to be sit in silence and it just needs to help you to feel centered, to feel at peace, and ultimately balance will come from that point forward. And then you'll be able to spread that throughout not only your life, but the lives that you touch, and hopefully, you know, nature, you know, herself.
Make a schedule. Okay, there's some practical advice. Make a schedule. If you find it really difficult, you know, to balance stuff like your work life,
reach out.
You know, reach out for sure.
Yeah.
You know,
Support.
Make a schedule, and you know, put things in there that allow you to have that time for yourself, essentially. Like Sabbath for me is one of those days where I call it like a self-care day. You know, so Sabbath would be like the day that I'll wash my hair, and maybe I'll like put on a face mask, and because Sabbath is like, it's like a center day. You're not working. You're not really supposed. It's like a day of rest in a sense. You know, so I take that time to. So I promote self-care. So take that time for yourself. So make a schedule. Have a day that you dedicate to self-care. And then throughout your week, have some time, whether it's 5-10 minutes, that you do something that brings you that peace, that brings you that joy. Whether it's painting or it's done, whatever it might be. Like Marlon said, you know, it doesn't have to be that you're sitting. But, you know, we encourage everyone to try meditation at least once. But whatever helps you to get into that, because meditation is a state. You know, it's a state when you're in a meditative state. So it's not just induced by sitting down in a particular pose, because
it's a state of being.
It literally
Peace is a state of being.
So, you know, I'm encouraging people to find what allows them to kind of enter that meditative state. So, you know, make a schedule and be practical about the time that you have throughout your day. And I think once you begin to make a schedule, you see that, okay, yeah, you know, I have some time here, or I have, you know, there's 10 minutes that I can utilize here. Instead of watching this show this evening, I'm gonna actually do something else. I'm gonna paint this evening instead. Yeah. You know, I'm gonna replace it with something else. And maybe I'll invite some friends around and we're gonna have a debate, or I'm gonna read a book. Or, you know, so, you know, so you can, every day can be something else. Where you read a book one day, maybe you meet up with friends. You know, think about little things that you can do for yourself.
That's an overall balance. Yeah,
just to encourage balance in your life as a whole, you know, because that's really what it's about. It's about making making it a part of your life, making it a part of your routine, you know. And these little things, as small as they might sound, okay, I read for 10 minutes last night. I met up with some really good friends that I haven't seen in a while, and you know, we really had a good vibe. Oh, I listened to this album that I've been wanting to listen for a while. That I listened to some new music. I listened to jazz for the first time. These little things can really start to bring balance into your life. It can really start to help you to enter a meditative state, help to kind of higher your consciousness. You know, it gives you time to reflect, and everyone needs time to reflect, you know, in order to move forward. So definitely would encourage that, and if anyone needs any help or wants to speak, you know that we're here, you know, we'll service, and you know, Marlon's a yoga teacher.
She's a whole PhD student.
Hi. So, you know, I've been practicing meditation for a long time, you know, so I can definitely offer that alongside many other things, but reach out.
We share our philosophy, you know, hopefully in what may seem simple, you know, in a way to overstand and for it to practically be used in your life, you know. We're both based here in the UK, and we are more than happy. Please leave a comment on the video.
Yeah, that'd be amazing.
Subscribe, tell us what you think, reach out, and, you know, take the philosophy, share it with us, share it with your family, share it with your friends.
Live, all I do is take away. My life is fleeting every second, every moment, every chance I get to live. All we do is take away. My life is fleeting every second, every moment, every chance I get to live. All I do is take away. My life is fleeting every second, every moment, every chance I get to live. All we do is take away. So I don't know why we waste time living acting fools. We so dumb in society, human nature, the way that God just made us. Not that it's easy. Creation of any innovation is bound to have its flaws. And would it be any fun if we was perfect? How now what? Small mistake on the paint and make art, paintbrush. What I'm holding in mind's making you visualize me and my girl walking through the park. Summertime, wind blowing through her hair, and when chimes butt apart.